My name is Elena Carter. I'm 31 years old, and on the day I buried my baby girl, I stood beside a tiny white casket, completely alone. My phone kept vibrating in my coat pocket with messages I refused to open, because I already knew what they were: laughter, music, sunlight bouncing off blue water, a party. Less than an hour before that moment, my mother had left me a voicemail that turned my blood completely cold. She told me to stop being so dramatic. She told me my brother's event had important guests, and that the family needed to show up. Then she said the 7 words that split my entire life into before and after: "It's just a baby. We'll talk later." My hands didn't shake when I heard it. They went completely still. I signed the funeral papers. I listened to the pastor ask if I wanted a private family moment. And I almost laughed, because there was no family behind me, there was only me. One folded blanket that still smelled like baby lotion. And a grief so sharp, it felt cleaner than anger. If your own family chose a pool party over your child's funeral, would you forgive them? Or would that be the exact day you stopped making excuses for them forever? Growing up in Phoenix, Arizona, I learned one thing early. In our house, love was measured in applause. And applause always followed my younger brother Ryan. My father used to say Ryan had the kind of confidence that made people trust him with anything. My mother loved calling him our little star in front of church friends, neighbors, teachers, anyone who would listen. Ryan smiled easily. He spoke like every room belonged to him. Even his average achievements turned into family celebrations. I was different, quieter, more observant. The girl who got straight A's, drew for hours, and learned very quickly not to expect recognition, because there was always a reason my accomplishments mattered less than whatever Ryan had going on. When I won a statewide youth art competition at 17, my mother hugged me in the auditorium lobby, took one quick photo, then whispered we needed to leave early, because Ryan had a golf mixer with some country club kids. Those connections matter, Elena. I stood there, award still in my hand, watching my parents rush me through a side exit, while other families stayed to celebrate their daughters. A year later, when I got accepted into university and announced I wanted to study education and art, my father smiled the way people smile when they're trying not to be rude. "That's nice, Elena. But teaching won't exactly make you independent." 2 days later, Ryan casually mentioned he might try real estate someday. Suddenly my parents were telling everyone he had natural business instincts. That was our family in one sentence. I did the work. He got the mythology. By the time I became an elementary school art teacher, I was used to being called practical, sweet, reliable. All the words people use when they want your labor, but not your spotlight. Meanwhile, Ryan became exactly the son my parents always imagined. Luxury real estate, tailored shirts, leased BMW, photos beside infinity pools. My mother introduced him at every gathering. "This one's going places." About me she said, "Elena is so nurturing," which sounded kind, until you heard the difference. Ryan was the future. I was useful. When I got pregnant I was 29. Newly separated from a man who disappeared the moment responsibility stopped feeling romantic. I was terrified. But beneath the fear, there was real, humiliating hope. I thought maybe this baby would change the shape of my family. I thought maybe my parents would finally soften. I thought a lot of foolish things, because I still wanted to believe blood meant something sacred. My daughter Mia was born early after a difficult pregnancy, and spent her first weeks under careful medical supervision. She was tiny, red-faced, stubborn, absolutely perfect. The first time she curled her fingers around mine, I felt a kind of love so fierce it made every old wound look smaller. I sent my parents photos from the hospital. Videos of Mia yawning. The way she scrunched her nose in her sleep. My mother always responded, "Eventually." But never the way I hoped. "Cute little thing," she texted once, then immediately followed with, "Don't forget Ryan's open house brunch Saturday." Another time I sent a video of Mia smiling, and my mother replied with a heart emoji before asking if I could address envelopes for Ryan's client appreciation event. Because my handwriting looked classier than his, my father would ask, "How's the baby?" Then 30 seconds later pivot into a story about Ryan showing a property to a former professional athlete, as if Mia existed in their minds as a sentimental side note. while Ryan's social calendar remained the main plot. When Mia had a serious breathing scare and I spent an entire night in the emergency room, my mother told me she was sorry, but couldn't come, because she had promised to help organize a poolside networking event for Ryan the next morning. You know how important these clients are. When I asked my father if he could stop by the hospital for even 1 hour, he answered, "Elena, your mother is overwhelmed and Ryan has a lot riding on this. Keep us updated, keep us updated." Like I was a weather app. Not their daughter. Not the mother of their grandchild lying under fluorescent hospital lights. Mia came home, but remained medically vulnerable. I learned to live with monitors. Specialist appointments. The constant low pulse of fear. Through all of it, Ryan kept orbiting through family life like a man convinced the universe should never dim his lighting. By the time Mia's health began to worsen for real, some exhausted part of me already knew I was going to face this completely alone. The doctors warned me as gently as they could that her condition had become unstable. I sent that update to the family group chat. Ryan responded 3 hours later with a thumbs up and praying, then posted a story from a luxury pool installation at a client's property. My mother called that night, not to ask what I needed, but to ask whether moving the date of Ryan's poolside celebration would look weak to the kind of people he was trying to impress. I stared at the wall while she talked, and realized she wasn't even hearing herself anymore. My daughter was fighting to live. And my mother was asking me to weigh in on the optics of a party. A few weeks later, Mia died in my arms just before dawn. The world did not shatter the way movies promise. It narrowed. The nurses were kind. The room was too quiet. My body still expected her weight even after they took her from me. I called my parents first, because some reflex older than logic made me do it. My mother didn't answer. My father did, listened for exactly 6 seconds, then said, "Your mother's in the middle of final setup for Ryan's event. Elena, we'll figure something out." That was the moment hope finally started to rot inside me. Mia's funeral was set 2 days later. I texted the date, the time, the chapel address, the cemetery location. My mother replied with one message, "We'll try." Ryan never acknowledged it at all. On the morning of the funeral, the sky over Phoenix was hard and bright in that cruel desert way, like even sunlight had no mercy left. I drove to the chapel in complete silence, still checking my phone, not because I truly expected my family to come, but because some broken part of grief still bargains with reality, even after reality has made itself perfectly clear. Then, 23 minutes before the service, my mother's voicemail arrived. Her voice was crisp, impatient, almost distracted, layered under background chatter and splashing water. "Elena, please stop calling. We cannot abandon Ryan's event. Important people are here. Stop making everything harder than it already is. It's just a baby and your brother's event matters more today. We'll talk later when you're calmer." I listened once. Then twice, then I locked my phone, because if I heard it a third time in that parking lot, I might have screamed. Instead, I walked into the chapel with my face completely numb, and let my closest friend Jasmine take my arm without saying a word. The service passed in fragments, the pastor's softened voice. White flowers. The tiny coffin that looked impossible and obscene. The feeling of complete strangers being gentler with my daughter's memory than her own blood family had ever managed to be. When the pastor asked whether the family wanted a final private moment, there was a pause long enough for everyone in that room to understand exactly what it meant. Jasmine stepped closer. One of my older colleagues stood behind me. No one from my family moved, because no one from my family was there. I buried my child with friends, co-workers, and 2 women from church who barely knew me, but came anyway, because they said, no mother should ever stand alone. After the burial, Jasmine pulled me into her car. She turned her phone toward me with an expression I had never seen on her before, part fury, part disbelief. On the screen, a social media story from one of Ryan's guests, a pool glittering under afternoon sun. Champagne glasses clinking. Ryan standing smiling near a catered brunch table. My mother laughing beside him in a wide sun hat. My father holding court near the grill. The guest had written, "Perfect family. Perfect day." Then Jasmine showed me something worse. Someone at the party had posted, "Keeping the Carters in our prayers while Elena requested a private goodbye today." requested a private goodbye. My mother hadn't just skipped Mia's funeral. She had lied about it. She turned my abandonment into my preference, my isolation into her excuse. That lie changed something in me more sharply than the voicemail had. Cruelty was one thing. Cruelty performed as innocence was something else entirely. I sat in Jasmine's passenger seat, still in my funeral clothes, and my mind became suddenly, coldly clear. I opened my phone and saved the voicemail to 3 separate locations. I screenshotted my funeral texts with timestamps. I screenshotted every unanswered call from that morning. I photographed Mia's memorial program in my lap. I saved the pool party stories. Then I asked Jasmine to send me every screenshot from guests claiming I wanted privacy. She did it instantly. "Elena," she said carefully, "whatever you're thinking, make sure it's for you, not for them." I looked down at the folded blanket in my hands, and realized for the first time in my life, those two things were exactly the same. I waited until the hour when parties are loudest, and people are least prepared to be confronted with shame. Parked outside a pharmacy, I opened the family group chat, the extended relatives thread, and a contact list Jasmine had helped me build from names connected to the party posts. I sent one message: since several people were told I requested privacy today, I wanted to share what was actually said to me while my daughter's funeral was taking place. Mia was buried at noon. I buried her without her grandparents. Attached are the funeral program, the texts with the date and address I sent days ago, the unanswered calls from this morning, and the voicemail my mother left while I was on my way to the chapel. I attached everything. Then pressed send. For 5 seconds, nothing happened. Then, delivered. Then, read. Then chaos moved faster than thought. My aunt replied first: "Please tell me this isn't real." A cousin wrote: "What voicemail?" A new story appeared from someone still at the party: camera shaky, no music, guests standing completely still with phones in hand. In the background, a woman's voice: "Oh my God." I finally answered Ryan on the 4th call, because I wanted at least one of them to hear exactly how calm I was. He didn't bother with "Hello, what is wrong with you? Do you know what you've just done?" "Yes," I said. I told the truth. He demanded to know why I couldn't handle this privately. "Privately?" I said. "Like Mia's funeral?" He started saying this had nothing to do with him, that important people were hearing things out of context. I cut him off. "It had everything to do with you. Everything always does in this family. Today was just the first time I stopped protecting that." He went silent, then snapped: "You're ruining my life." Over one voicemail, and there it was, not over a dead child. Not over what our parents chose to do, over one voicemail. Over consequences. "No," I answered. "Your life is being ruined by the truth your family told when they thought I would stay quiet." I hung up before he could say another word. 10 minutes later Jasmine sent me a screenshot. My mother stood near the shallow end of the pool, face white, one hand pressed over her mouth, while my father argued with a man beside the catering table. Ryan's girlfriend had walked away from him entirely. My mother eventually texted: "Stripped of all her usual polish, take that down right now." We were going to explain later. Explain what? That my child deserved less because Ryan had investors beside a pool. I typed back one sentence: "You had your chance to explain when I called from the cemetery." She replied instantly: "You are vicious." That word settled over me gently, because it proved she still didn't understand. Telling the truth about what someone did to you is not vicious. Expecting silence after cruelty is. By the end of that afternoon, Ryan's girlfriend had left with her family. One major prospective client quietly told others they didn't do business with families who treated dead children like scheduling conflicts. My mother stopped attending her church group. My father became the kind of man people politely acknowledged, without inviting anywhere, and Ryan sent me a voice note raw with resentment: "If my relationship is gone because of this, that's on you. If I lose business because you wanted attention, that's on you too." I listened twice, not because it hurt, but because it clarified the entire family system in one single breath. My grief had never been an emergency to them, their inconvenience always was. So I made a decision that would have been impossible for the version of me who still chased their approval. I blocked Ryan permanently. I blocked my father. I sent my mother one final message before blocking her too: I buried Mia alone. You don't get access to me after that. 2 weeks later, there was a memorial donation drive at my school. Something Jasmine had quietly organized in Mia's name. I stood in my art classroom after dismissal, watching parents I barely knew personally dropping off supplies and offering quiet, genuine condolences. And it struck me, compassion kept finding me from directions my own blood had never once bothered to look. I went to grief therapy and learned that anger can be clean when it's finally directed at the people who genuinely earned it. I started a small scholarship fund at my school and named it Mia's Corner, because I wanted my daughter's short life attached to beauty, not only to pain. I volunteered monthly with a support group for mothers who had lost infants, and every time I sat in those circles, I understood more clearly, my real healing had never been about humiliating my family. It had been about refusing to let their cruelty write the final word of my daughter's story. Months later, I heard Ryan had moved to a smaller agency. My mother had withdrawn from most social circles she once treated like oxygen. My father became someone people politely nodded to, without inviting anywhere. I don't celebrate those details, but I don't mourn them either. A consequence is not a tragedy, simply because it finally lands exactly where it belongs. The genuinely satisfying part, if I'm honest, wasn't watching them fall, it was realizing I no longer needed them in order to rise. If there is one thing I would pull from all of this for anyone listening, being related to someone does not entitle them to your silence, your labor, or your forgiveness. Blood is not a permission slip for neglect. Shared history is not a free pass to step over someone's pain, and then demand full access the moment the crowd turns against you. For years I believed being a good daughter meant absorbing hurt gracefully. I thought love looked like patience without limits. I was wrong. Love shows up. Love listens. Love does not rank one child's social calendar above another child's funeral, and when people reveal, clearly, repeatedly, undeniably, that they are not capable of that kind of love, protecting yourself is not cruelty, it is wisdom, bought at a terrible, irreversible price. Mia should have had grandparents who rushed to her side, who held me up, who understood there are moments in life when every party, every client, every guest list becomes completely meaningless. She didn't get that. I cannot change it, but I can make sure her life is remembered alongside one clear, unshakable truth: she was never just a baby, she was my daughter. She was loved, completely, and without condition, and the people who treated her death like a scheduling conflict did not lose me because I was vindictive, they lost me because I finally loved myself, and my child, enough to stop calling their cruelty normal. Revenge may grab attention, but dignity is what lasts. The most meaningful ending of this story is not that my family was embarrassed, or that Ryan's polished world developed cracks, it's that I no longer live inside their version of who I was supposed to be. I carry my daughter's blanket, my grief, my boundaries, and my hard-earned peace, forward into a future they don't get to touch, and after everything, that peace feels less like an ending, and more like the first truly honest beginning of my life. If this story reached something real in you, share it with someone who needed to hear it today.